का नाही?
आपका बिल्कुल भी आवाज नहीं आ रहा है।
Am I audible now? Sorry for the technical flaw. Good afternoon, friends. It's a great pleasure to welcome you all for this from Ajay Sir's platform. Is it fine now? Good afternoon, friends. It's a great pleasure to welcome you all for this knowledge sharing series initiated by IIA Aurangabad Center. IIA Aurangabad Center has always been doing this series from January 2022, and this is the fifth in the series. Before this, we had interactive sessions of renowned speakers like architect Aniket Bhagwat and architect Swapnil Warwandkar. We had local architects Dheeraj Deshmukh, who presented on redevelopment of Kranti Chowk, and architect Maya Vaidya ma'am, who presented on conservation of natural habitat. Today, we have a new dimension to our series. Recently, architect Sachin came up with his book Dialogue with Architecture. And today, IIA Aurangabad takes privilege to launch this book on digital platform. This would be followed with his presentation and conversation with architect Ajay Kulkarni sir. But before that, I would call upon our center chairman, architect Neeraj Barjate sir, to address you with his welcome speech.
Happy Teachers' Day and festival welcome to all on this auspicious occasion of Gauri Ganesh Utsav of our state. Our teachers share their knowledge and shape us all. In our every step of life, we keep on meeting people who teach us a new perspective to look towards life and profession. Our team, staff, colleagues, friends, children, and fellow architects keep on adding values and ideas. I treat them as teachers who shape my life. This day is also marked internationally by architect fraternity to celebrate the anniversary of our one greatest architect at all time, Charles Correa sir. In our knowledge series today, we are conducting fifth webinar for the soft launch of book by architect Sachi, a dialogue with architecture. To inaugurate the grace this occasion, we have Sri Vijay Taude sir and Rajan Narkandi sir with us. Let us hear the view and experience of his journey of writing by architect Sachin with architect Ajay Kulkarni sir. Also, I appeal the gathering here to suggest the executive committee few more topics for our series. Our suggestion will be add more exposure for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Today's event is special because it's for the first time that an architect's book is being launched on a digital platform. Sachin Angshikar studied architecture from Sir J.J. College of Architecture and was awarded gold medal for his final year design thesis. Before setting up his own practice in 2000, he worked with architect Charles Correa for almost 8 years on diverse projects ranging from institutes and housing in India and in USA. He further worked as an associate on Cancer Research Center in Lisbon and various other institutional projects. Some of his personal works include 26-story residential towers in Mumbai, winery in Nasik, houses in Ambi Valley, Goa, Chiplun, and a municipal market, resort, and also school in Goa. He has also designed the Cancer Hospital in Lisbon, which was recently completed. This book is compilation of simple notes made by the architect Sachin, where he is constantly trying to analyze his thoughts on architecture, the process of design, and his observations based on personal experience. Today, on the eve of Teachers' Day, we all pay our respects to architect Charles Correa, who taught what Indian architecture is all about to the world. I request our senior most authority in our town, Professor Vijay Taude sir and architect Rajan Natkarni sir, to release this book. So, in this book, speaks about the origin of design by enumerating the importance of lines drawn in different planes that give shapes to plans, sections, and elevations. This untimely help in choreographing the three-dimensional spaces. Thank you very much. And I now hand over the entire session of presentation to architect Sachin Angshikar sir.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me?
So you'll have to unmute.
Yeah, I have done that. Can you hear me now? Thank you so much for inviting me today and also for organizing this book launch. It was really touching. And today I'll be talking a little bit about my journey as a student, uh, my experience in Chancellor's office, and about this little book which I've compiled during the lockdown. Uh, we see the presentation. Yeah, I hope you can see the presentation. So I'm sure everyone will agree that books can change one's perception. When I was small, I came across these books called Learning to See, and they were in three parts, and they were very simple books with lots of sketches in it. And the intention of the book was to make you see or observe things which you generally take for granted. For example, it spoke about how different trees have different shapes of leaves, and when they fall on the ground, they make a beautiful collage with different shades of green. It also made you look at shapes which could make beautiful compositions when they're placed next to each other. So, if you look at this page, I mean, this is a page from the same book. Uh, they said that if you take any shape, any three different shapes, let's say, and put them together, there are so many options you can have, and you can make so many different compositions from these three different shapes. And then finally, it also says that if you put a box around it, and they look like actors on a stage. Now, frankly speaking, at that time I could not understand what the book was trying to say. But I was quite enthralled by this book, and I used to copy them when I was small. There was something in these books which had caught my attention, but I did not know what exactly. So probably these books were also, working on my mind subconsciously, and I finally decided to go for architecture. This was a major decision I took without knowing anything about the profession, I suppose, like most of us. Well, I was fortunate to get into JJ School of Architecture because, unlike today, there were only three colleges in Mumbai, and like most students, I was quite naive and innocent in the first year, and by the time we reach the final year, we think that we are a little brighter, and somewhere in between, uh, we come across this book called The Fountainhead. It's a famous book, and I'm sure everyone must have read this. And when you are in college, you tend to sort of assume, especially the boys, they assume that you are like a reincarnation of Howard Ruark, and and we stop listening to our professor. Then our library gave us access to more books, and so we were quite influenced by the works of different architects and different styles in architecture. We were fascinated by technology and form. We strongly believed that architecture was a form of art, or a building should be more like a sculpture. And then when we reached final year, we had to do some serious reading, and we came across this fantastic book called Form, Space, and Order by Professor Ching. And I'm sure everyone has seen this book because it has such beautiful sketches and it covers every aspect of architecture. For me, I thought this was like a Bible. I thought it was a guide to design any building. Unfortunately, our library had only one copy of this book, and it was a very expensive book to buy. I mean, even today, I mean, it's really expensive. So I decided to make the summary of this book by noting down all the important points and copying some of the sketches. So I summarized the whole book into 10 pages. These are some of the pages which I have drawn, and it was quite an effort to go through the entire book and making notes. But I was quite happy that I had my own copy at the end of the day. Now, unfortunately, even after doing all this book did not help me while designing the way I thought it would. Nevertheless, this I think was a step in the right direction, and I do not regret spending so many hours summarizing it. After 5 years, of course, the college gave me a certificate and I had proof that I was an architect. But I had not realized that there was so much more to learn. I was not prepared to face the big bad world. So the first thing I realized that Professor Ching's book was not the Bible, it was a bylaws book. It takes complete control of your design. Then comes the client. I mean, they treat you like a draftsman. I mean, they tell you how to design. I mean, then soon Pinterest links were used as a mode of communication, between you and the client. Then there were also other designers involved in the same project who had an upper hand. And then finally, what gets built is not exactly what you have imagined in the beginning of the project. So what goes wrong? This is my first project, which I had designed when I was 25. It was a convention center in Mount. And after it was built, I strongly felt that something had gone wrong. It was it's a big project and people take so many photographs, but still somewhere in my heart I felt something had gone wrong. And this is not what I want to do, or this is not what I want to do in the future. So I had to take a pause and think. I needed help. I desperately needed a group. So this was, like 5 years after my graduation, and I decided that I need somebody like Charles Correa to help me. Charles Correa had once said that nobody can teach you architecture, or to that matter, any form of art. You learn from someone only if you admire that person immensely. And I keep thinking about it even now. What he said was absolutely true. Whatever I've learned, and I'm still learning, is only because of this one person I'd met almost 27 years ago. I joined his office on 1st September 1995, which was also his 65th birthday, and soon I got a taste of his extraordinary energy, the passion with which he worked, the precision, the great sense of humor, and of course his temper. I had never met anyone so passionate about architecture. And while he was around, I mean, ideas and sketches just kept flowing throughout the day. Simultaneously, there was this person called Krishna who made beautiful chemical models and buildings just transformed into these wonderful sculptures right in front of us, in front of our eyes. And Charles was not only interested in architecture, but his knowledge about history, religion, politics, music, movies, and sports was incredible. He was well read and well informed. He could speak on any of these subjects fluently. His ability to express architecture with such profound clarity, connected with other subjects like movies, art, or humanity, was unheard of. I mean, nobody has spoken to us so passionately when we were in college. So each day was like a learning experience, and we felt like newborn babies trying to grasp every word he said. Charles would often speak about Le Corbusier and show us examples of his works. He knew each and every project in great detail. Yes, he respected Le Corbusier immensely, just like we had started admiring Charles and others. According to him, Le Corbusier was a scientist, an inventor, whereas we were all engineers who were trying to assemble the spare parts that he had already invented. Now, being a perfectionist, Charles would often lose his temper with imperfect people like us working under him. Our day would start and end with words hitting us like bullets. We were experts in making blunders, so we had to learn the hard way. I remember there was this small poster which was pinned up in the corner of the office. As you can see, there's a frog which is being swallowed by the bird, and the limbs are dangling out. And yet the frog is trying very hard to survive. And the message below says, "Don't ever give up." So every night we looked at this inspiring poster, and he came back the next day with an urge to accomplish better. But hardships also followed with rewards. After working for a couple of years, one day Charles called me in and he said, pick up any book on Le Corbusier from the library. He had this huge shelf full of books. And he said, it is better than anything I can do. Now, this book, with a lovely message inside, is more precious than any degree I could have received from any of the universities. And since we are discussing about books, I mean, this book reminds me every day that no matter what difficulties I face in my practice, I should not forget what I've learned from this great man. So, when I started my uh, practice, I had learned two important things. One was clarity, and the other one was simplicity, which is required by design. I remember him saying that you should always focus on the experience inside the building or any space and not to look at the building as an object or just a piece of art. So when I started my practice, he once called me and he asked me if I could design an Anganwadi for the Charles Fourier Foundation. And the government wanted to build this as a prototype which they could repeat in other villages of Goa. So I sent him drawings the very next day and I wrote in my email, and this is the plan. And I wrote to him saying that this Anganwadi is basically like a large veranda with openings on three sides to allow cross ventilation and bring in light. And there are four rooms in four corners which could have doors and windows which can be locked, whereas the rest of the thing will be all open. And as you can see, the four rooms were like a storeroom and a small kitchen and toilet and a creche, and the central portion was for the multi-purpose activities. So, and then this building will face the rain tree, which was right in front, so that it becomes part of it. And all these openings, the large openings, are on axis with the rain tree. And the children would then be either playing outside or inside, depending on the weather condition, depending on the sun or the rain. And from outside, the building would look like this, which is a simple box with a big opening in the center. And there'll be similar openings on all four sides. So I sent him the mail, and it's this mail with these drawings, and I had to wait for the reply. And trust me, it was like waiting for my final year results. All kinds of thoughts were crossing my mind. Is he going to like it? Really, did he ask me to return that book on Le Corbusier that he gave me? I was really scared. And the next day I received this reply from him. And unfortunately, I mean, he did not see the building being built. But I suppose that's was the best mail I've received till now. So this is the Anganwadi, which is under the big rain tree, and it's painted bright red for the children. And what I like about this is that it just emerges from this brown soil, which is very common in Goa, the laterites do, and the background is all green, so I thought the red would go very well with the surroundings. And of course, the children love it. So this is the Anganwadi, and as you can see, the front is always covered with a shadow of leaves and branches which keep changing during the day, which I think is quite interesting. The interior spaces are always well lit, and they always look positive and happy with the light coming in. And this is the side which faces the main road, and the big tree is on the right hand side. So you can see that this is a very simple building, and uh, with large openings, a very simple form, which fortunately got built as a prototype. Another important thing which Charles used to say was,
Right.
make sure that your initial big moves are always right, and rest will just fall in place. He also said that you should be like a good cook. You should know what is it that you're making. I mean, you cannot make a dish using just spices or masala. And I think that was a problem in my first project. So 15 years ago, Charles had designed a cancer research center in Lisbon, and I was working as an associate on this project. And it's quite a striking building, and there are more than 1,000 cancer patients from all over the world visiting every month for treatment. And yeah, I was his associate, and uh, this is the building at the top. You can see.
Yes, Sachin, just a minute.
Yeah.
Just a moment. Sachin, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Little louder on your
Okay.
audio. Maybe come closer to your mic, maybe. We can hear it, but it will
Okay.
be more clearer.
The mic is very close to my mouth, but
Okay, fine.
uh, yeah.
Okay,
If
good.
there are any other settings which I can change, I don't know. Is there anything I can?
You may mute your laptop.
My laptop. But I don't know how to do that. But
Okay.
can you?
Okay,
I
let's
mean,
go ahead.
Okay.
Please continue.
Okay. I'll try to speak louder. Uh, yeah. So uh, this was a project which was designed by Charles. As you can see, there are three buildings with huge curved walls. And 3 years ago, I received an email from the same client asking me if I could design a hospital for pancreatic cancer right next to this building on the same plot. Now, in such a case, when you already have a landmark building standing next to yours, one has to be extremely careful. Now, this building, which I was designing, had to look like it was always part of this whole complex, and the only difference is that it was built 3 years later. So it was important that the architectural language had to be same, and we had to use the same material palette. And the scale of the building was extremely important, and we had to ensure that the physical connections between the old and a new building did not spoil the existing building. Apart from that, it was also important that the building has a very calm and relaxing environment, considering that most patients will be in their last stages, as pancreatic cancer does not have a cure as of now. So it was important that we keep in mind three things. One was the natural light, because Lisbon has such beautiful light most of the time. So it was important that we bring as much light inside as possible. Then came the use of water. I mean, we were very close to the ocean, but unfortunately, we could not see it properly because there was another building in front of us. So I decided to bring the water inside the building, and so we have created these water bodies which could again give that very calm feeling. And then the third thing was the privacy, because patients who come here don't want to be seen while they're being treated. So it was important that they get the privacy while they're there. And uh, this was the entire site. As you can see, the buildings in white are the existing buildings, uh, and they have a very strong form. Or you can see the black line, which is a very strong curve wall, which is the highlight of this project. And our side for the new hospital was on the right hand side, which is the orange patch, which you can see. It's a rectangular plot which I had, and it was quite narrow compared to the triangular plot which was there for the earlier buildings. But all this faces the main road. And now the client wanted us to build around 20,000 square meters of built-up area, and they also wanted me to leave around 50% of the plot vacant for future expansion. So what they did was, just to make my life a little easy, I mean, they just copied one of the buildings and they placed it here, and they said maybe you can add 5 more floors to this. Um, and I thought that, of course, they would help, trying to be helpful, but I thought such things happen only in India. Uh, I always believe in scale, and I know how important it is for any projects. And there was no way I could have designed a building taller than the existing building, which was just 4 stories. And what I thought that, in fact, it has to be shorter than shorter than the building which is in the middle. Now, Charles used to say that do not be afraid of losing a project, but make sure that you do not compromise your design just because someone is asking you. Now, this project was too good to lose, but I still wrote to my client and I said that no, this can't be done. And what we have to do is something like this, which where the curve is very gentle and the building is not more than 3 stories, and for this we need the entire site. Uh, Fortunately, the client understood what I was trying to say, and as you can see, these curves sort of complement each other. And in fact, the new building is trying to divert people towards the existing building. And once they accepted this, and the rest just fell in place. So this was very important. This was the big thing that Charles was always talking about, and I think what you did here was absolutely right. The plan, this is the site plan as you can see now with all the buildings together. And the black portion that you see on top is actually the ocean. And the building in white is the new building which is at the bottom. So this is the lower level, or let's say ground level 0 as they call it. It's a very simple plan. It's a rectangular building with a curved wall in front, and the 2 pockets which you see on either side, the triangular pockets, are basically open to sky, and it has a shallow water body and some trees. And the day hospital is on the left hand side, and the research labs are on the right hand side. And everybody faces, including the reception, everybody faces the water body. And it's very nice for the patients to actually come out and sit under the sun. I mean, of course, with the trees next to the water body. And similarly, on the right hand side, the scientists also like coming out and taking a break in that open sky area. This building was also raised by 3.5 meters from the road level because we have double basement and the water table was very high. So we have a ramp which takes you up by 3.5 meters, which is sort of hidden by the landscaping and a straight wall in front. As you go up, we have the rooms which face the water body, and some of the rooms face the rear side, and the ORs, operation rooms, operation theaters, are on the right hand side. And the rooms which are at the back, they also have a strip of water body which is right outside the glass. So since we cannot see the ocean, and this is a view of the water body, the open sky area which is in the front. And as you can see, there are trees there, and it's a shallow water body, and that's the reception area which you see at the back. And the curved walls have these large cutouts. So this wall not only gives you privacy, but it also allows the people inside the building to get a glimpse of the city outside, but they are not seen from the road. And inside, this is the lobby which has double-light space. We have a wall which is reserved for the painting. This is just a placeholder, but and it is. We are hoping that somebody will come and paint, and probably the theme should be hope, because people who come here will come with a lot of hope. So we're still waiting for the right artist to paint this wall. Right now it's blank. I'm sure it'll be done one day. And this is the front elevation of the building. And it's a 170-meter long building, which is, as you can see, it's very elegant, and it's 3 stories tall, uh, like I was explaining to my client. And uh, this is the Anganwadi, which you can see the little red box at the bottom. So if you compare these two buildings, I mean, you'll notice that there is a similarity between the two, even though the size is quite different. Uh, and the common thing is both are very simple and yet so bold. I mean, they're quite bold, I would say, um, and they stand out on their own. There's nothing more, nothing that you have to do. What these walls, they just come out, they just emerge from the plan. And since this building was being built during the lockdown and COVID and all that, I mean, I couldn't go to the site. I started getting pictures which were being clicked by a photographer, Rosariz, who was kept going to the site. And I thought that these pictures were quite interesting because Rosa was looking at things quite differently than what we look at. We look at the finished product, whereas she was finding beauty in even the bones of the building. So, as you can see, they're quite interesting pictures. I'll show you, and it also reminded me of that book, that book which I spoke about initially, Learning to See, which was actually helping us to notice things which we take for granted. And this is exactly what Rosa had picked up, and she started sending me these pictures, which were beautiful. That's the curved wall while it was coming up with its cutouts, and then pergola on top. And this was during the inauguration. I mean, they used that space for water. I mean, they did not have to fill it with water, but they used it for as a seating arrangement and presentation. They had invited the King and Queen of Spain and the President of Portugal to inaugurate the building. That's the building from the top, and on the top you can see the existing building, so how the curves meet each other. And this is the courtyard, which is now filled with water. And that's from outside. The ramp goes up, and it's hidden by this landscaping. And finally, 2020 was another eye-opener because everything came to a standstill and we were forced to take this pause. And for me, this was a second pause. It was a pause to think and analyze, as we had so much time and very little to do at that time. So it was for me. It was evident that my way of designing had changed somewhere down the line. I was not repeating what I had done in my first project, and I thought that the buildings looked calm and sort of controlled compared to the first one. And I remember this famous quote by Picasso, where he says that you know he could draw like Michelangelo when he was small, but it took him years to learn how to draw like a child. It also means that he had to go back to his roots to understand what was going wrong and what is it that he had to unlearn so that he could paint something even more spectacular. So I started thinking consciously, what is it that helped me in all these years, after working with Charles Korea and after doing a couple of projects and all that. So what is it that was helping me now? And there were so many other questions which were crossing my mind. I mean, for example, what is the true meaning of architecture? Can a building evoke feelings? what is the origin of design, why are lines so important in architecture, why should we draw and think like a child, why do we feel peaceful in a particular space, and why is simplicity so appealing and yet so difficult to achieve. There's so many things we will think about, but since we have time this time, I was thinking about this consciously, and it made me go back to where I started. So I once again went through the books which had inspired me, like to begin with, the learning to see, and then I was thinking that now I was finding it a little easier to understand what the book was trying to say compared to when I read it when I was smaller or even in between. And there was something I was looking at uh, differently, even though it was subconsciously perhaps. And then I recall the immense pleasure I had when I had my own 10-page book on form, space, and order, and I went through all those pages once again. And this time they were telling me a completely different story. Now, I had not changed as a person. I mean, my IQ level had not increased for sure, but I felt that the thoughts were more clearer than before. I was also worried that these thoughts would disappear soon after the lockdown was over and we get back into the grind. So I decided to make notes, and I think I love making notes. So I decided to make notes, and this time since we had extra time, I started complementing them with photographs. And then I was tempted to print a few hard copies so that I could give them to some of my friends and even my staff. So whatever it's worth. And finally, a publisher thought it would be interesting to actually reproduce the book exactly the way I had printed it and make it available for more people. So I would like to confess that I'm not a writer. However, I think that these simple notes are interesting as I'm sure everyone can relate to them as we have similar experiences and we all go through similar situations. Now, I'll go through a few pages so that one knows how to connect with them because, I mean, they may sound very simple, but probably you'll have to read between the lines to actually connect with them. So, I mean, I'll just go randomly through those pages. And now this is one of the pages. It says, an architect has to keep dreaming. Some projects are like dreams come true, while some remain as beautiful dreams. Now, we have all experienced this. We work on projects which never get built, and sometimes we don't even get paid for our designs. But the good thing I feel is that the unbuilt projects are always our best projects as they are in their original state. They are not diluted by the ground realities or by the client or many other issues we face. So these designs actually help us to charge our brain and they also act like a foundation for the next project. So there is no need to be disappointed if the project is not built because there will always be a dream project waiting to be built by you. Now, this is another page which says plans give birth to elevations. Elevations which evolve effortlessly from the plans are simple, pure, and hope. Actually, they are like children until they spoil them. What it means is that the focus has to be on the plans. The plans are the ones which evoke feelings because we make people walk through them on paper and then it gets built in a similar way. So when the plans are perfect, there is very little one has to do when it comes to elevations, and because these elevations evolve automatically from the plans. The moment we feel that there is need to work on the elevation, it means that we have to go back to the plans. Otherwise, we just spoil them, we spoil the project, and we also fool ourselves in the process. Now, this is another page which says, talking about children, I wonder Why can't we draw or color like them anymore? Perhaps we try too hard to impress our clients or the media. What we lose in the process is our innocence. I wish we could revive our childish instincts. What it means is that one has to observe how a child draws. A child does not have any restrictions and it can draw just freely. I mean, it does what it wants to do. Use any colors they want to use because there is no restriction. Whereas as we grow, we restrict ourselves and we are more worried about the reaction. And we are all the time trying to impress others more than ourselves. And in this process, we lose our focus. This page says, house is like a shrine. This is where you find peace. And you will find it only if it's devoid of any distractions. So what this says, what it means is, there is beauty in simple things around us. For example, one can learn to appreciate how the light enters your house, how it transforms your space, the color, the texture, and there's so many things. And when you start noticing these things, it just makes you feel calm and positive. However, it's difficult to get these feelings if there are too many distractions that clutter a space. And this is another page. It says, sometimes I wonder why simple solutions are not so simple to find. And what it means is that there are always simple solutions to every problem. Unfortunately, we cannot see them, but you'll find them if you change your approach. So, once again, I would say that this book, this is not a book that will teach you how to design. This book has notes based on what I've learned from the books that inspired me, from the people who showed me the path, and from my personal experience. However, what I expect this book to do is to help you focus consciously on little things in architecture which we take for granted. And once you start noticing them, there is a whole new approach to architecture that you will discover on your own based on your own experience. And then maybe you'll make your own notes which will help you. So this is the book, which is small, like it's just 5.5 inches by 5.5 inches, half of A4, so I could fit in 6 pages on A3 and save paper. So that's how we got the size. And this book has around 90 pages. And maybe you know Piyush can send you or circulate a link which will lead you to, which will help you buy this book if you want to. But I want to thank everyone for attending this lecture, and I'm also very thankful for people in Aurangabad who have actually arranged for this book launch, and I hope people will like to read this book. Thank you so much.
Yeah. It was amazing to read you through your works. We are talking from Aurangabad. I'm not sure whether you ever visited, but this has got a very deep cultural foundation in terms of the philosophical thought, in terms of religious thought, and needless to mention, an amazing uh, variety of architectural typologies since last 22 centuries. And it's a matter of coincidence. Aurangabad used to be the capital of Satvan dynasty, which ruled the very large part of the entire subcontinent. And there used to be it's known as place of saints. Dhaneshwar Maharaj, Eknath Maharaj, Sufi saints, all of saints. So, incidentally, Eknath Maharaj used to be from Paitan, and he wrote his own impression on Bhagavad Gita. So that Bhagavad Gita is too complex for common people to understand. So I thought, like Dhaneshwar Maharaj did Dhaneshwari, he also wrote Eknathi Bhagavat, that is very popular in Maharashtra. So when he used to write, it's beautiful Paitan houses, nice open courtyards, central courtyard. Sit in the morning. And in morning hours, there used to be a guy who used to bring covered. Now, we recently had covered carriers in Banaras. They carry that water and put it in the houses. Like Kaudi as a Marathi. So the covered guy used to come. He used to finish his job and sit in front of Dhaneshwar Eknath Maharaj. Wait for his next order, what to do. But his prime task was to fill water in the house. And while he's busy writing the interpretation of Bhagavad Gita. So one day he was tired. He says, मी थकलो आहे नाम्या तो लिहा था पुढचं तू लिहून टाक. He says, I don't know how to write. I don't know. You are a very evolved community. I'm just a covered guy. And I don't know how to write. What does this all mean? And now, after a lapse of so many centuries, if you open that Eknathi Bhagavat book, difficult to find out which is the original, which is the supplement. I can't call it supplement, written by the second author. So Anganwadi to me and Charles Correa's email narrating that thing. This is a great job, Sachin. Yes, indeed, while you're showing the pancreatic cancer project, believe me, I wasn't looking at your plan. I wasn't looking at the expanse of that building, but I was recurrently, off and on, and severally, I don't know why, connecting to Anganwadi project. And finally, you summarized it, that this is Anganwadi. I think it's very amazing, the second pause of your works in your journey. I should not say your works, but second pause of stopping for a while and trying to assimilate what is learned, what is not learned. Because first pause was really after you did that conference complex. And that was a big lighthouse you got. That's all matter of chance and matter of fate that you entered in Korea's studio, and it was amazing in between two pauses, first pause and second pause, and your contributions are absolutely stunning. What amazes me in your work, while I was going through your website, your thoughts, because when you're telling a story of your journey, I was drawing a graphical equivalent, being a graphic designer. What you were talking, I was trying to graphically put them in terms of lines. They're all simple lines. very tough. Simplicity is appealing, but very tough to achieve. That's what you've written in your books. I mean, I'm amazed at your clarity of thought. Though I can see that there's a lot of restlessness in you. You are quite agitated, but your works are very grounded, very stable, and your works have reached where you want to reach faster. Maybe it's our human, I don't know, unrest, unsurety, insecurity, whatever you call it. But your works have reached where you want to reach, probably much earlier than whatever. That's my impression about all this you've done. Learning to see, looking at Rosha Chappell's book and getting that amazing Pritzker Prize in form of Korea's Mel, and that Eknathi Bhagwat's continuation of CCF at Pancreas is amazing, absolutely. I have no words to say. I don't know what should I talk to. I mean,
Thank you so
I'm
much.
supposed to have a dialogue with you, but I'm now what I'm at least to have any words in my mouth. My impressions are
Thank you so much.
and I'm just as an onlooker. I just want to understand your turbulence or your smooth landing or takeoff, whatever, in catching over to Pancreas from CCF original work. How good or tough it was for you?
Yeah, it was quite tough. It was actually a project which was abroad, and so that thought itself was quite overwhelming. And I was actually in two minds whether I'll be able to do justice to the project or not. And when the client approached me, I was not sure why have they come to me, because there's so many talented architects in Lisbon itself. So when I saw that email, in fact, I wrote to them saying, "Are you sure that you want me to design? Have you seen my work?" I mean, because I was almost sure that they haven't seen my work. They had met me while I was, working on the earlier project. So they said, yeah, we are quite sure, and since you know the other building quite well, I mean, you'll be able to do this. And but I have a very small practice. I have just two people in my office, so it's a small firm, comparatively very small firm, and I thought, initially I thought I will not be able to do it, and but then considering even Charles Korea's office was not very big, and Charles, myself, and another person had worked on the earlier project, and three of us could do it. So I said, okay, maybe we can still do it. I mean, it's possible, and then uh, the designing part was not difficult, but the problem started much later because there were two other architects involved in the project. One was the local architect who was actually doing the working drawings, because everything was in Portuguese, and we did not have the license. So he was going to do the working drawings, and there was another firm from the US who are experts in hospital designs. So they were doing the internal planning, whereas my job was to do the entire shell and give them the guidelines to fit in everything, and of course work in hand with them, so that to make sure that everything fits. Now, the firm from US was quite a big firm. They have around 1,000 architects working in that firm, compared to two working in my firm. So they were wondering, why do you need another architect to design the building from outside? I mean, why do you need an architect from India? Whereas they were doing 10 times bigger projects in China and all that. So they could have designed the whole building, and that's how their approach was in the beginning. So I had to sort of convince them that, I mean, what the client had done, I mean, their choice of architect was not wrong. So I had to sort of prove myself that eventually what will get built is of the same quality as what Charles has done in the past. So I had to work very hard to convince that, because otherwise they would have just bulldozed me. And then when it came to the local architect, I mean, he also probably felt that why do you need another architect? I mean, so uh, when the drawings were being made, I mean, they started making changes in the initial design, and they started moving the windows, changing the sizes of windows and openings and things like that. So every time the drawing came, I mean, I had to search for any changes they've made and uh, fight back to get things back in place. And sometimes I have to actually write to the client and complain that, look, this is not happening and that is not happening. And fortunately, client was very sharp, and probably I mean, they knew where they have to step in and all that. So the client never replied to my emails, but he made sure that the drawings were changed and the initial sketch was retained. So it wasn't easy. And then there came the time when I couldn't go to the site and everything was being built over there. So I had no knowledge what was happening then. But what got built was exactly the way we had designed. So that was a good part. So it wasn't an easy project to execute, but yeah, I mean, there were ups and downs, but at the end of it, we became good friends. And the the architect from US, he said, if ever I build a house, I'll come to you. So which is a good thing, And so it ended up well.
Absolutely, I can understand the kind of pressure you must have worked under. I mean, this is unbelievable. This story is very, very inspiring, especially in today's context where architects are unfortunately judged on the basis of turnover and your balance sheets and all those things. And this is a real honor to architectural fraternity, that they they in a sense, uh, in Charles Correa's words, if you allow me to say that, Charles Correa had come for a talk in Ahmedabad, Le Corbusier 40 years apart. I happened to attend that. So he said, architects must be risk takers. The clients must be risk takers too. So I can really witness this real life risk taking on both sides. I mean, absolutely stunning. I mean, just uh, I had an opportunity to interact with Charles Correa for Vistara exhibition, Festival of India, and during that small interaction and very small interaction, which we spent a very long time with him, we've seen him on a different uh, point of view. How how difficult it was to work with Korea, if you recall. I mean, going into nostalgic thoughts, just to know from you, hear a lot of
Yeah.
stories.
No, it was very difficult to work with Charles and work Charles' office. I suppose it was mainly because there was a big age difference, because when I joined, I mean, I was 26 and I mean 25, and he was 65. So it was like a 40-year age difference. I mean, he had that experience and we had zero experience. Uh, so we always made mistakes, and he used to lose his temper, all the time. And I don't blame him for that. But so I would say, I mean, you know, uh, I would say that it was like uh, undergoing some military training. So when you are there, when you're in the camp, life is hell. But the moment you step out, you realize that you have learned so much. I mean, whatever you would have learned in probably 10 years, you just learn it in 2 years because of the hectic schedule or whatever the way the way you work there. So that really helped me. I mean, and he was a fantastic uh, person. I mean, there was so much to learn from him. I mean, uh, but he never taught us anything consciously. In the sense, he did not hold a hand and teach us anything. So so we had to learn from him. And like I said before, I mean, you learn from somebody only if you that's what he said, that you learn from someone only if you are you know if you like that person immensely. I mean, so so that's what happened probably. And no matter how difficult it was to work in the office, we saw only the good things which were happening. And we are, all of us are really thankful uh, that he he gave us an opportunity to work in his office. You know.
Absolutely amazing. So, uh, so now what kind of projects currently you are involved with after the second pause? Now things are getting back to the normal, and your thoughts, which are now in frozen in that book, are they changing your direction of architecture now?
Well, not really. I mean, the thoughts, I mean, of course, are, I mean, they are sort of imprinted in my mind now. I mean, and basically, those are the thoughts which have changed me actually. Uh, or rather, I have tried to write down what has changed me, or what is it that I've learned from Charles Korea. Architecture, of course, hasn't, the projects haven't changed after COVID. I mean, though we thought there would be a big change in people's thinking and the kind of, you know, projects we were doing earlier. I
Not
mean,
so.
the requirements and all. I mean, they're all forgotten about COVID, and they're all back to square one. Uh, so we haven't. I mean, as of I mean, the current projects which I'm working on, I mean, they're not that many, but uh, at the moment we are designing a couple of houses, which also teach you a lot. In fact, I would say that, when I was in Korea's office, most of his projects were quite big. I mean, they're all institutional scale. And in such projects, I mean, also because you have a small office, you tend to look at the bigger picture. You make big moves and you make big gestures and all that. And then came a project which was a small house for his friend, who was an artist, uh, Mehdi Gobai. And there is this Gobai house, if you see his book. Uh, I got a chance to work on it, and that is the time when I realized that Charles could actually zoom in and look at smallest things possible and work on it in a different way. I mean, it wasn't same as working on large projects. He could just go into the minutest details, and he was very much concerned about the scale and all that. And what he did was, what very nice thing which I should tell everyone is, he said that for these projects, I mean the small project, you should not draw anything smaller than 1:50 scale. And that time we used to draw, and we were not using computer. At least I was not using computers till the end. And mine was the only drawing board in that office at the end of it. But he said draw sections at 1:50 scale or even bigger, because the institutional projects, of course, they are very large and you can't draw them, so they are always in parts. When I started drawing them to a larger scale, especially the sections, I could actually feel the space inside the building or inside the house, and that was like magic. I mean, I realized that how important the sections are, and how important it is to draw to a larger scale. 1:50 is, we even in college we had stopped drawing to 1:50 scale. Uh, and this I realized was so important, very important for any project. So, and he said that Le Corbusier used to insist on these things, and this was probably the only chance he got or we got to draw big scale drawings, and that taught me a lot about how to design a project more than the other institutional projects. This little house which came our way really helped me. So right now I'm designing two houses, and it always reminds me of my days in the office where we used to really look at what should be the tread riser, ratio, and how a person can look
Oh,
down and interact visually and all that. So visual connections are so important, especially if it's a ground plus one structure and things like those. And where what should be the size of the cutouts, or what should be the size of a courtyard. I mean, just making a hole in the plan doesn't mean it's going to be a nice courtyard. It needs a particular scale depending on the height of the wall, the height of the courtyard, and all that. So everything is interlinked and interconnected, proportion, the scale, and everything. So, and this came very easily for him. For us, we had to actually draw and see. And for him, it was very easy. But that project really helped me, and the large scale drawings really, really helped me. So, yeah, yeah, I probably
I'm
lost talking about, but I suppose you got what I'm
no
saying.
great. No, while we are interacting, my mind is completely overwhelmed with the seamless shift of two hospitals. Same language looks like it's so much easy to capture that essence without physically copying it. That's something is really overwhelming my mental cloud right now while I'm listening to your amazing nostalgic. Now, what role does model making play in your design process? Do you make models in your office?
Yeah, we do make models, but since it's a very small office, we are always running short of time, and because it's become much more easier on SketchUp, and probably you can walk through it, and it's to
Yeah,
scale. I mean, we tend to use SketchUp a lot more than physical models,
yeah,
and and after sometime probably you get a hang of proportions and scale and all that. So you are not really dependent on a model to see whether what you're doing is right or wrong. So
yeah.
at the moment, I mean, though I would love to have a model built, uh, we are depending a lot on SketchUp, because nowadays the younger generation, they're all experts at these softwares, and also, and for them it takes any time to uh, create a 3D model. So uh, yeah,
There is a question for your hospital project. Why water body and not a green space where one would go physically? What's your idea
yeah. So there
or
were two
philosophy?
things, right? Uh, the earlier project, which was designed by Charles, uh, had a courtyard which was full of trees, and like you yourself said, I mean, we did not want to repeat something. I mean, something we didn't want to create something identical. Also, my level zero was 3.5 meters above the road level, so which means we had parking below it. There was a parking lot, and there's another
Okay,
basement below it. So the load was also an important factor, and
right.
we couldn't have planted large trees over there. And then, of course, the view of the ocean, which was missing in our project because of another existing building right in front of us, which was blocking everything. I thought it would be a nice change to have water in the building, and of course we also have a few trees which are exactly above the columns, so they take the load and all. But I thought it would be nice to sit along a very shallow water body and just look at that calm feeling and see the ripples in the water and see the light bouncing off uh, on that water, and that itself was enough to make you feel nice. So that was my philosophy and my idea of
Hmm,
having water inside.
amazing. Yeah, I remember while this building was being inaugurated, we had interacted on WhatsApp. You shared few pictures.
Yeah.
The graphics on the floor. There's some graphics on the floor of this project. You
Oh
have
yeah,
visited?
no. That was actually there was the building was being inaugurated by the King and Queen of Spain, and they had written a message. I don't know how
Okay.
they did it, but it was like a big print, like a handwriting, uh,
Okay.
which was printed on the floor, in the water body, and so it was not graphics, but it's like a message that it says that this building has been
Yeah.
inaugurated by
Okay.
King and Queen of Spain on such and such a date.
Yeah. Okay. It's more than 1.5 hours. It's lots to interact with you. It's so inspiring and so engaging. You really take so much things from.
Next time we should meet personally, in this virtual thing
I
is of
think,
course
yeah,
there.
yeah.
Yeah, but it's
Even I
nothing
feel
like
so. Yes.
meeting
Yes.
face to face. Yeah.
So,
And
Sachin, thanks. Thanks for your insights and inspirations and your courage. I wish you all the best. And it looks very simple to do such a massive project, but I know how tough it must have been. So, congratulations for that's a grand success
thank you,
internationally by an Indian architect. We all are very proud. In a
thank you so
sense,
much.
you have continued the legacy of the great Charles Correa from that account to really, at a very early age, to do works overseas, and particularly, like you said, 1,000 against 2, and that is wonderful thought. And that's the power of architecture. That's the power of ideas, and that's the power of creativity. Now it's giving me also a lot of energy to bounce back, and it's a good message that you've given. Don't be afraid of taking pauses. You can be reborn with these pauses. Sometimes they are natural, sometimes you have to plan them. So that's the message that you're given to all the viewers and people who are watching this. And soon we will meet in person. Very inspiring. So
Thank
now
you,
I
thank
will,
you.
yeah, amazing. So now I will transfer it to Piyush. Thank you.
I'm sorry. Thank you, Sachin. Yeah, this is the most mesmerizing sessions that we have ever had in our knowledge sharing series. I wouldn't be wrong if I would say that we were listening to you as if Charles Correa is speaking to us. It is great to see that we have people amongst us and like you who are carrying forward the legacy of architect Charles Correa. Thank you everybody for attending the session. Thank you Natkarni sir, Taude sir for making it up for releasing of this book. Thank you V Media for managing this event and all the viewers who made this possible. We promise you to bring with more such inspiring sessions in future too. Now I would just request everybody to be on the screen for a group photograph. We are paying our gestures to architect Natkarni sir and Taude sir by presenting the memento. And to architect Ajay Kulkarni, sir. Thank you. Thank you so much for making this possible. Thank you, Ajay sir. Thank you, Taude sir. Thank you, Natkarni sir. It was great having you, Sachin. And as promised, yes, we should be surely meeting in physical events very soon.
Yeah. Thank you.
Right, signing off from IIA Aurangabad Center. Thank you once again.